Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. We promise to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, your sweet tooth. So visit our refreshment center now. Let's go!
G'day everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Lunchtime. Today we have Danielle Walker, the comedian from Townsville. She's one of my favourite comedians and I can't wait to get into it. Let's go! Three, two, one. Welcome to Lunchtime, Danielle. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. So we wanted to get you on. I've actually been waiting for this for a while. We mentioned before, but I've been super excited to have you on.
Thank you.
So,
do you do many have you done others with other comics and stuff?
I had one previously. I don't know when they're all going to be put out, so.
We can't say anything about who we've talked to yet.
Okay. I'll ask after.
But yeah, we sort of wanted to get people on from all walks of life. Anyone who has an interesting story or like doing something cool. So I was watching. I feel like all my stories at the moment start with TikTok. I'm obsessed with the thing. But I was watching TikTok one night with my partner, and then we saw you come up, and we've ended up just having a good stalk of all your videos and things. And I was like, we have to get her on. So just wanted you to give us a rundown about sort of where you're from and growing up.
Yeah, cool. I'm from Townsville, North Queensland. And yeah, I don't know. I just started up there because the TikToks as well. I didn't put any of them up, so I didn't know. All of a sudden, some of them started to go off, and then I was just like, "What's going on?" Because then you start to get all the other people, and you're like, "What's? I don't know how this has happened." But then, so I just needed everybody to know I'm not on TikTok. I'm very not good at social media. But yeah, I'm from North Queensland, and I sort of grew up in the rainforest because when I was a kid, I'd spent heaps of time with my nana and granddad up in Tully, which is like the wettest town in Australia. There's like a 2,000 population up there. And so my granddad, he was like caretaker at the army camp. So we would just spend all day sort of off in the rainforest and stuff. So that's sort of like, I guess like where I get my background from.
Yeah. And you put in your Insta, when I've obviously done a little bit of a stalk, but your Insta bio was just going like, life in the country, eradicating feral pigs.
Yeah.
What is that? Is you on the back of the ute and like dad in front just whipping through?
Well, that is my granddad at the army. He invented a special type of pig trap that would just catch feral pigs and wouldn't catch cassowaries because they're all big. And then, we just I had my Pee Wee 50, my little quad bike, and he'd get in the ute and drive it through the scrub to all the pig traps. And then I'd just help him, and then, we'd shoot them, put them on the back of the ute, then re-put the bananas in to try and catch more. I think that was when Granddad, because his eyes had started to go, so the traps were easier than sort of the spotties in the dark.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, my uncle, he goes shooting those, and also he used to do brumbies from helicopters and roos too, because a lot of people, they're like, I think people don't want to kill animals and stuff, which is obviously you don't want to, but also sometimes they're causing a heap of issues. Yeah. So I'm very passionate about the feral pigs front, which is very strange. It's like, we got to get rid of the feral pigs, guys. This is not a laughing issue.
That was one of your bits that we watched as well. They're one of the ones that came up on TikTok as well, actually, when we had a stalk. One of your bits about the feral pigs.
Oh, yeah. I've got a few bits about pigs.
They should be the main topic of conversation.
Yeah. I bring everything back to the pigs. I'm obsessed, and we got to get rid of them.
And the other bit was very obscure as well, is the ODing on parsley.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even know that. I had a bit about that.
Oh, no, it was in your Insta bit.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, I didn't, because when I was a kid, I had my motorbike. My Uncle Peter bought me this, quad bike when I was, 3 or 4, And my granddad hand sewed me a little bag and put it on the front of my motorbike so I could just sort of like go off into the rainforest by myself. And he taught me like what veggies and what sort of like fruits and stuff I could eat. But he also had a veggie garden, and I'd just go and eat. And if there wasn't anything on the vines or anything, I'd just eat parsley. And I ate so much parsley that I didn't know it was a diuretic, so I had to go to hospital because I couldn't stop peeing.
Oh, really?
It was. I didn't know. Nobody knew because nobody's ever eaten that much parsley.
I'm trying to grasp how much parsley that actually is.
I swear it must have been like I guess like a bag of spinach worth of parsley.
Jeez, that's a lot. Yeah.
That is a heap.
I just liked it. I don't know. But it's a garnish. You're not supposed to eat that much.
How old were you when that happened?
Probably like 4 or 5. Yeah.
Wow.
So you're riding motorbikes at 4 and 5, shooting pigs.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get to shoot the pigs, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're a pig. Yeah.
Yeah. I got to help with the like gutting. We went to like a fancy restaurant, me and my partner, a little while ago, and one of the dishes came out and it was like the exact same colour as like a pig like liver, and I just like got quite like emotional. Because it took me back to like my youth, and Granddad, when he'd like, because we'd hang the pigs and then like he'd gut it, and you know it's like a sack basically. It's all in one area and it just sort of can all fall out at once. And Granddad would like show me all the organs and tell me what they're for and stuff. And because if you kill like back up there, he had to kill the feral pigs, but you could make extra money by taking them down to like they've got like these sort of like drop-off areas up there, because we don't eat feral pigs here in Australia, but over in like Germany and stuff they do. So you get double the pay because you get paid to kill them, but separately you can send them over to Germany and they eat them over there.
Yeah, right.
So he'd get double that. But yeah, we'd be looking at all the organs and I'd see all the different colours, and they're so perfect. Like they're so shiny and like, yeah, they just look so beautiful.
This is a very strange obsession. Yeah.
And I was in the restaurant and Jonah was like, you got to stop talking about where everybody can hear you.
You just go
You're crying.
Sorry, guys. Did you guys by chance import these back from Germany?
Yeah.
How did your little heart take that when you were seeing that as a kid?
I just like, because when you're a kid, I don't think like life or death, like I think you're taught to fear death or whatever, if just by not seeing it. But if you just grow up seeing it constantly, there's not really that fear and stuff, and it's just part of life.
Yeah.
Like in the country, I don't think, people are like, oh, we got to eat, so we got to kill the things to eat them.
Yeah.
So obviously that's going to happen. In the city, you don't see it as much. It's just like you go to the shop and it's just like a product.
It's already there and it's not real. It's not an ex animal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I grew up country as well. I was Albury,
whereabouts?
On the border.
Wodonga. Yeah.
Oh, don't you dare.
Sorry, I did.
It's shameful.
There's a very strict border in the middle between us.
Is Albury the Victorian one?
Albury's the New South side.
Okay, yeah, okay.
And then, but I grew up mainly, it was called Gindra, which is about 25, 30 out of there.
Yeah.
And it's the same though, where that's very country there, but I was in a town of the rural area, so I wasn't actually on the country, like on a farm or anything, so I didn't see any of it. But I had mates that would always do that, live on the farms and things like that. So I was very protected in that little safe, little safe haven, little oasis in Gindra. So then when I'd go and stay with my mates, I loved animals. And then there was a couple of times as well, I was like, oh yeah, do you want to come out? And we're herding the sheep or something. I was like, yeah, that's fine. And then one of them had a little injury and the dad just runs over and started on there like, oh my God, what the fuck just happened? Like tears, going back home like traumatised and things like that. We got to get out of Gindra. So yeah, I definitely couldn't handle it.
Oh yeah, I mean it's so different as well. Like I guess like I still don't want to see animals die and stuff. Like when I was a kid, my dad, I was like going to, because my family's like a hockey family, which is, I don't know does everybody have families that are into sport, and are they all cults?
Yeah, so I feel like your family has that thing.
Yeah, it's like it's a cult. Yeah. Like it's just every weekend you're at the hockey, and like it was like one Saturday morning I had to feed the chooks, and my dog had killed a possum, and on the way to the chooks, I realised that there was like a tiny baby possum on the ground and it was covered in black ants. And so I picked it up and I picked all the black ants off. I was probably like 8 or 9 and I like carried it up and I was like, Dad, we got to call the wildlife people. We got to call the wildlife people. And then Dad was like, give it to me. Go get dressed. Oh. And then I came back out and he was chucking it in the bin in a plastic bag. And I was like, he was like, it's dead anyway. It's going to be dead anyway. I was like, but it was alive right then.
Oh, that's so damn. My heart would break.
Yeah.
That would seriously traumatize me. So, that's moving on to your parents. So
yeah.
What is living in like Townsville, sorry.
Yeah.
What was their purpose for being there? Is that where they've always been?
Yeah, well, my mum grew up in like Tully, Innisfail area. Oh, she sort of grew up around the place, I guess. She was born in Katherine in the Northern Territory. And then my nana and granddad sort of had a caravan and they sort of lived all over Australia. Well, my granddad worked in the mines and stuff. And sort of machinery and that sort of thing. And then they lived in Tully for ages until, I guess, like I was about 8 when my mum had my sisters. And so we were in the suburbs, sort of like not suburbs, but like out of town, all on acreage, out in blue water. And I don't know, I really liked that, but my sisters had a completely different upbringing because when they were like, I guess like when I was 17, 18, mum and dad split and then they moved into the suburbs. So that's sort of weird too because we don't have like the same, like I feel like I grew up like in the country, and then my sisters are like, ugh.
What's the age gap between you?
Like 8 years. So yeah, they're like 22 because they were born in the year 2000.
Wow. Does that freak you out?
Yeah. Are you?
Yeah, well, that's funny. I always go like, oh my God, the year 2000. I was only 98.
Oh yeah. So I can't tell anybody's ages now that I'm an adult at all.
No, I'm very similar. But I find that some people I'm like, oh yeah, they're old when they're really young. Or I'm like, oh, you're really young when they're actually really old.
I think as an angular face makes people look older, younger. You know, when you see like a 17-year-old and they've got a really angular face and you go, well, you are 30 because you can't, like there's no baby fat on your face. You can't.
Yeah, right.
You look like an adult.
Yeah.
But no.
Well, that's where all the social influencers at the moment, I feel, they're those blokes who are the very...
chiseled
jaw, really, really lean guys. I don't know, like the Timothy Chalamet and things like that. And
oh yeah,
like he's chiseled.
He's chiseled.
He's very chiseled.
He's lean. He's actual lean.
Is he gaunt?
He's borderline gaunt, right?
Yeah. I think chiseled is more like Adonis. I think gaunt
like
is
big big muscular. Yeah, he's probably malnourished.
yeah.
Who's an example of a big Greek goddess bloke?
Surely, like Chris Hemsworth is the one, right? Would you say that's is that? You. I don't know.
He's Thor.
Yeah, that is.
That's the perfect example.
Thank you.
Well done.
Well, so this is very interesting then. So you've grown up on farms and in the forest and things like that. Where did the transition into comedy come from?
Well, my cousins, I did scouts when I was growing up. And I don't know, there was like one of my friends there, Tom, he was always like, oh, yes, you got to do stand-up sometime. And then my cousins, Mitch and Megs, were always telling me I should do stand-up. But then it felt so like I don't know, like I can't think of the word, like it felt gross to me. Like you just talk about yourself on stage, like so disgusting. And so I didn't do it for ages. And then, I don't know, when I was 19, I moved to London. Also in Townsville, I don't know if you feel like this in the country, it feels like you can't, it doesn't seem like you can do anything.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know you could just do stuff.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's either, it just feels like sport or like farms.
Yeah, I know. I was not getting anywhere to a sport. No way. My dad would always promise me if we played hockey, he was like, if you score a goal, I'll buy you a McFlurry. 8 years of hockey, 1 McFlurry. Yeah.
It was the same with when I was a soccer family, right?
Yeah.
And then, so I like loved playing all sports and things like that, but my sister, when she started getting into it, was kind of like actively running away from the ball. So then my mum and dad were like, righto, so every time that you touch the ball, I'll give you 50 cents and things like that.
Wow.
But I was like, are you kidding? She's getting paid to touch the ball. I'm dominating. But anyway, so then it got to the point though that she actually became really good at soccer. But when she started going up the ranks and playing higher levels, she's still getting paid by my parents. And I was going, this is bullshit. How is she still getting paid? But it's like she's playing for 3 teams.
Did you get any?
No.
No.
You did well today, mate. And that's not what I want.
Well, I guess you liked it.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, I did like it. So with your family, how did they support the transition into comedy?
Well, I think I sort of I moved to London, saw people could just do stuff. And I was like, I guess when I get back to Townsville, I'll start doing comedy. That makes sense. Townsville's the home of comedy. Yeah. And then I signed up for a course in Townsville. It was a comedy course, and I didn't think I told my mum I was going to do it, but I told my dad I was going to do it. But I told him he couldn't come, and I told him I just wanted to see if I could write comedy. But I'm sort of a psychopath, I think, a little bit, in that when I set my mind to something, I'm going to do it. So I went into the course with the mindset of being this will be my career, which is an insane thing to do. And I did it, and then one of my friends filmed the set, and I showed my mum and my dad because it went really well for a first gig. Now I'd be so ashamed if anybody saw that first set. And I think my dad, he thought I was just I don't think he knew that you work really hard at something and it doesn't you don't get overnight success. It's a process. I went away. There was a comic who came up to Townsville, and he saw me, and then he organised a bunch of gigs for me down south, and I went and did them, and I came back home and I was like, I got to move away from here to do this. And I think Dad thought as soon as I moved down to Melbourne, it would be a month and I'd just be on every TV show. And I told him it was going to take, I was like, probably 10 years, Dad, probably 10 years. And he was like, not for you, though. Nah, not for you.
Not for my little girl.
Not for, yeah. And Mum was I think she was just like, well, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
You just go. I think Mum just thought I was just going to, because I always thought I was probably just going to get married and have kids or something. I thought I'd probably just be on a property with a dirt bike with a bunch of kids being like, all right, get down the back, clean up the chook pen, or whatever. I just thought that's what I would be, because that's what you look around and everybody else you see is doing that. Yeah. And then, I don't know. Now they're fine. I think Dad's well, when's this going to happen? Yeah. I thought this was going to happen ages ago. Well, I guess you'll just be this for forever. Yeah. And Mum's just like, I'm going camping, so if you're going to be on the TV, I don't give a shit. So
unless you're on the radio, I'm not listening.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to, I guess, create your first set, and how long was the first set? How long did you perform for?
I think it was really good because I really liked doing a lot of people there don't do comedy courses or whatever, but I really liked it because it was sort of 7 weeks, and every week you'd go, and it was just run by some amateur comics, and we just all got to talk and go over our sets with each other. So it felt nice because you sort of had friends there and support on the night.
Really like-minded people.
Yeah, and it was as well, the first gig, it was everybody doing their first gig, and it was a really packed night because of that. So it was I think if I had done my first gig at an open mic in Melbourne with 7 people at it, it would have been less fun than doing it to 100 and something people in Townsville. And it was 5 minutes, I think we did, or 7 minutes. We just spent the 7 weeks sort of workshopping gear until we all got to 7 minutes. And then, we just did it, and it was great. I think everybody had a really nice time. Nobody bombed because it was a supportive crowd of people's family and friends, except for my family and friends.
Imagine that, your own parents up there going, burn! You suck! How were your nerves leading into that? Is you something that you've really not done or had much exposure to? I think because I'm so, I don't know if you go psycho in those things where you're I've got a goal. It was in my mind I was so nervous, but I was I've just got to get through this because this is the start of the rest of my life. There's this thing in, I don't know if it's comedy or just every industry, where I feel when you first start doing it, you think that you're so much better than you actually are. 100%. And then you look back and go, what
yeah.
the hell? I thought that about my footy career as well.
Yeah.
I looked back at my stats in my first year and I was like, how did I get a second contract? I would have hated playing with me.
Yeah. I think it's Dunning-Kruger or something. You think you're so good, then it wears off at the right time. And then you think you're the worst, but you're actually much better than you are, but it makes you work harder to get to where you want to be. I don't know. Do you think that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. As someone that's creative, yeah. I think you go into places where you're man, this is good. This is good. I like this. And then a week later, I don't know why I'm doing this. This is terrible.
Maybe this is the stage that we're at now with the pod. Our feedback's been good. So maybe we're really shit.
We need to change something.
What's happening? Hopefully we look back on this and we're going to be so much better because of it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, do you listen back?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's hard.
Yeah.
I think listening for me is better than looking. When I'm seeing myself on the camera and then I'm like, when I'm laughing or something, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
But listening, I'm fine.
Oh, really? You're fine with listening?
Yeah, well, because, I don't know. Yeah, I never really get that weirded out with my voice. I mean, it definitely sounds different, but it's not like I don't hate it, I suppose.
Do you like your voice, Danielle?
So I was listening to your voice then to be like, would I?
Do I hate Max's voice?
No, it's all right. I don't know. I don't like. I don't know. I think sometimes I sound quite like high pitched or like, I don't know, nasal. I don't know. And then also like I'm constantly laughing and I hate it. Like I'm just giggling throughout everything.
Well, I think
and
that's
it's like,
perfect. I genuinely think that's great because you know when like for the examples that we watched and we were seeing you on TikTok and things like that and you're saying a joke and then you're laughing, I'm like, you're having fun. And that's what sort of drags us in, I think.
Oh, yeah, well, I think like on stage, I think sometimes if people are annoyed by me laughing, they're like, she's laughing at her own jokes. And I'm like, no, I'm not laughing at my own jokes. What I'm laughing at is I think it's insane that I'm in front of a crowd and I'm getting to say this thing. And that's what I'm laughing at. It's like I've just said a silly, insane thing and then people are laughing. And then in my mind, I'm like, magic.
Have you ever used props on stage?
Oh yeah, I love a few. Like I always, sometimes I have drawings and stuff or images. My show this year, I had like a full set, and I had lots of like things on the shelves and stuff around me. And I love a bit of. I mean, I don't really have like forks or. I guess that's probably not a well-known prop. You know, forks. But yeah, I use a lot of like visuals a lot of the time. I really like doing that because sometimes, I don't know, I don't think I actually am good with words, which is not great because I think very visually. Yeah.
Well, I think what I was alluding to as well is you brought was it a joke gun on stage?
Oh yeah, my hand. I usually take that with me.
That is what... Yeah, that's what really dragged me in. For the people at home, we have to cut that in. We'll have to cut that in there. The boo, 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 boo.
I'm in the other 50% of my time writing sick jokes. Boom, 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 boom. I got you with my joke gun.
That video, because I didn't realise, because that was one that went really big on TikTok, and then I was like, what's going on? And I went over there. And sometimes I test myself because I don't know if you get this, but if there's sometimes videos of you that go up online or whatever, there's always going to be horrific comments in it. And you go online. I remember my first one a few years ago that went online, and I'd never, because in real life nobody ever comes up to you and says mean
they don't
things.
say terrible things to your face.
Yeah,
never.
and then you go off the crowd's response, and if you're like, I do well at gigs.
Yeah.
You go like, well, I'm good at this. And then the first time a video went up a few years ago and it got negative comments, it like really shook me. And then now it's like so far later that now sometimes if a video is up, I know there's going to be, and I'll just test myself. I'll go online and see like what's in the comments and see if it hurts. And it doesn't anymore, which is good. But I thought that I didn't realise that video got put up like a day after that like shooting in America. Yeah, wow. And so there were a few people who were like in the comments being like, it too soon, and I was like, oh, this video, somebody ripped it, it's from ages ago.
Oh right.
Like it's not been uploaded. I didn't do a joke about shooting people the day after a massacre, okay? I probably last night I did a show and I don't know, there was a joke about fundamental human rights or whatever. I had a line in it, but I hadn't been on the internet really all day.
Oh, about the abortion.
Yeah, so I hadn't seen anything. And then, it went good with the crowd, but then my partner after was like, oh, when you said that line, I was stressed out. And I was like, why? And he was like, the thing? And I was like, what thing? And then he told me, and I was like, I got to start reading the news.
Well, how does, as well with it seems though your family is a major part of your shows as well, about your jokes and how you recall stories and things like that. How do they handle those sides?
Oh, my dad, sometimes is like a bit. Well, he just doesn't want me to say his partner's name, really.
Right.
But I think he's been the butt of like the jokes throughout our family all his life, so he's sort of fine with it. And my mum, I can say the worst thing. She's just happy to be mentioned. Doesn't care. She's just like, every time she's like, and do you talk about me? Yeah. Even if I'm saying something not great, she's just like, oh, me, I'm famous.
Give her a shout out now. Say hello.
Hey, Tony.
She's
Love
made
you.
it. I got grilled as well from my sister as well, because I had, my partner, mum and dad, made many like appearances in the pod. And
Yeah.
she's like, people don't even know I exist and all that stuff. So yeah, Sal, there you go. She's happy.
Oh, so she got jealous because you talked about your other family?
Yeah, she was filthy.
Can you tell me a fact about her that, apart from the fact that she doesn't like to touch the soccer ball?
Yeah, true. Oh, well, actually, she's already got a mention previously in a fact about her.
Yeah, so shut up, Sal.
Yeah, Sal. Hey, any publicity is good publicity. She'll be stoked with that.
Hey, and you were talking about like negative sentiment. Has there been any gigs where you've been like, oh, I've not done this well? Because you seem to have started really well.
Oh, yeah. I think because like in comedy, like everybody's going to have bad gigs no matter what. And the whole thing is like every time you get a bit that's really good, then you have to be like, okay, well, that's done now. I've worked that up. I can put that away so I can start working on the next thing, so I can build a show. And then so you've got to start from the bottom again. And sometimes you write it and it's perfect from the get-go. And you're great, I can just work on this and make it better. But sometimes you start it and go like, I know there's something here, but it's going to be real bad for a while. And sometimes you're like, how is this bit? It usually goes so well, and now the audience, they hate me. And I bomb, like, my partner says I'm his favourite person to watch bomb. Because when I bomb, it's like, if you see like a normal straight stand-up, like who's just doing relatable comedy bomb, the crowd, it's just like, they're just like, no, he's not funny, whatever. And then, but if I bomb, they're like, she's crazy, we're worried she's not okay mentally. And that is like the worst thing, because on stage you're just going like, I've been bombing so badly and knowing that they don't think I'm mentally stable, to the point where I like start telling them, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm not crazy.
Which
and
makes
that doesn't
you seem
help.
more
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, fueling the fire, right?
Yeah.
So that sounds as though that he is your sort of barometer of what he thinks funny or whatever. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. I always run stuff by him, and sometimes he's right, sometimes he's wrong. But also, like, he's real good because he used to do comedy as well.
Oh, right.
And so, well, he's more like comedy educated than me, because I didn't grow up watching comedy and he grew up like studying comedy. So I can ask him questions about it, as opposed to like I sort of studied my family, which is probably why I like talk about them the most, because I think they're the most interesting people in the world.
Yeah.
But he's really good for like bouncing stuff or whatever. And he does get annoyed though, because I need like validation about everything. So I'll like be writing and I'll be chuckling to myself, and then I'll walk in and be like, what about this? And then read it to him and he's like, very good. And then I'll go away and I'll write one more line and come back and then be like, but what about this? And then he's like, you got to come back once you've finished it, not every line.
I find that often as well, like finding, especially in a footy sense, that validation to know that it's like that's the right thing and like keep doing that is so important, because there's often times as well that like you alluded to, that it's often the fans that give you the most negative feedback, but that's the one that you listen to the most.
Oh yeah, those aren't fans.
No.
But for footy, I guess they would be, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
Would they be like,
even the people that are wearing your scarves and things are the ones that give you the most.
oh,
I started, the reason that this has sort of all come about in podcasts and things, because Wiz over here and James started making all these videos, and I just put them up on Insta. They just were me taking the piss. I wasn't getting a game in the one, so
yeah.
it was just like making the most of it in the footy hub where everyone had to move away.
Okay, so you were on the bench, is that what?
No, so there's a massive squad, and then the team that plays in the AFL gets picked from that squad every week, and the blokes who don't get picked play in the VFL.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I was in the VFL squad for the whole time, and yeah, so I started making these videos, and they were purely just for my amusement and for our amusement and things like that. But then the comments just kept rolling in. It was like, if only you put this much effort into footy. All this stuff. And I'm like, come on, guys, I'm trying. This is my spare time.
Is that because it must be so annoying because if you're like training all throughout the week and being like, I spent a little bit of time thinking about this video and then filming it and putting up, but not 50, 60 hours.
Exactly. The rest of the time I've been on the field or in the gym and I'm like, I'm trying, guys.
You should film that and put it up in real time. Yeah. Film the full 50 hours and be like, you want to see?
Yeah. This is how much I'm doing. So your comedy career pathway, has it been quite linear or like steady on the up, or has it had its sort of times where, especially over the last few years, where you feel like, oh, it's really plateaued or?
Yeah, it's sort of been a weird one because I think like I started and had that thing where you think you're so much better than you are at the start, but because of that, you've got no self-doubt. So you're like fearless and then you're like, boom. And so I came out of the gate and was like in Melbourne and was like, I think it took me like 4 or 5 months before I was like booked at all the like good gigs sort of. And then things got better and better. And then like I did like, there's this comedy competition called Raw, which is like a amateur comedy competition in Australia. And the first year I got to like the state final and I remember being like so angry in my mind. I was like, oh, I should have, but then, like in your head, you're like, I'd never say it out loud, but I'm fuming.
Yeah, so you know who's won and you're like, oh.
Yeah. But then
the better person on the night were really like, fuck.
Yeah, but then it like, I was like, okay, I'm going to spend the next year working so hard. And then I worked really hard, and then the next year I won the competition, and then I went over to the UK and they did another competition over there, and I did well in that. And then I came back, and the next year I did like Comedy Zone, which is this thing at the festival where they handpick a bunch of like acts they think are really good, and then you do that. And then the next year I did my first show, and then I won Best Newcomer, and then I went to London and got to do my show over there. And then my next show just went fine, because it's like your second show. And so it was like, I think that was tough to be like every year having something where you feel like you're like, I'm on the up. Yeah. And then you do your first show and then the second show you're just like, meh. Yeah. This is fine. Yeah. And then I decided I was not going to do a show the next year because I was like, I don't know, I just feel like.
What year is this?
That was, I think, 2019 I did my second show. And then I decided I wasn't going to do a show 2020, which was pretty good because the festival got cancelled.
Yep.
Smart. And I was like, yes. But then 2021, everybody else had like a show to do because they'd shelved a show and I hadn't been able to do many gigs or anything. But I'd been doing other stuff and thinking and whatever. And then, so I didn't do a show 2021, but I'd been thinking a lot and got a bunch of ideas together. And I'd luckily had some other stuff go well, so I had like some money and stuff, so I was able to buy a good camera and go up to Townsville and film my family a bunch. And I sort of like had this idea for a show, and then I applied for this grant to help make it because it was sort of quite ambitious with like a set and stuff. And then so it felt like I was like plateauing from like 2019 to the start of this year, because like it's hard though because on paper, people like see your achievements and they think that you're like really, like they can't imagine that you feel like you're plateauing, even though you go like, oh, it's been a few years since I did anything really like I'm proud of. And then I worked so hard on that show for this year, and then that went like really well and I just felt so good about it. And then like I got like the grant, and then I got like a nom for best show at the festival and won the Pinder, which then helps fund my show, which I'll go to in Edinburgh in Scotland in a few weeks. And that just felt really good. Like this show, I was like, oh, I've spent so long working on this show and now I feel like I can really write a really good show. Instead of like, my first show was like great for like a first show, and it was like, yeah, the like Best Newcomer is like, it's about like who we think has potential to be a good act and is a good act for where they are. Not sure, like the best person in the world, which I think sometimes people get confused by. They think it's like an indicator that you are incredible and being like, no, you're good for how long you've been doing it or whatever. But this felt like a really good show this year. So I feel like this year was like, it was plateau, and then now I'm feeling like I'm leveling up. I don't know if you feel like that in sport where you feel like you're constantly like, I'm good for where I'm at, and then it feels like you're plateauing, and then suddenly you're like, oh, I think I'm better now where I'm at, and then it's like constantly you're like doing that.
There's always these little checkpoints. You feel like, that this is something that I've been aiming towards, or something that I wasn't so good at, and then now I'm doing it consistently well. So it's not really, it's different because you're doing the same thing every week, just against a different opposition, whereas you're aiming towards the next show, I suppose, or like how can I improve my act? So, so it's not really, you can't really look towards like, all right, how can I like develop this in terms of I don't know, something that's in the future or in a different area. It's more like my skill on the field. Like I've been bad at kicking, I need to get better at kicking. Oh, my kicking was better this week, so if I can get a better, like keep it good, then that's a checkpoint. And then it's like my ground balls need work. So it's sort of like more just aspects of the
Although
game.
I think we sort of like do that a little bit as well. Like I used to be with a different management company, and I moved to my partner now. He works in management, and he's with him and another guy have the company together. And I think the thing I really like about him is he's real big into sport, and he sort of like loves that like coaching mentality. So he'll like talk to us about that, and like another act he looks after Emma. He's like, I don't know. He's like, Emma's going to work on her stand-up at the moment. So we always talk about like leveling up every skill set, like being like, okay, so crowd work and then whatever visuals and then like stand-up and then like, I don't know, responses and facial expressions and like almost like leveling them all up, then moving up. So it's sort of like that, I guess. Because stand-up can be quite like lonely because you're just like sort of working on your own stuff by yourself. Yeah. But then having that, like, it feels like with him and then the other people, it feels like we've got sort of a team. Because that's something I do envy about sport is like you can, I don't know, work together.
You got other people to help you, for sure. So like I said, that it's like, well, the thing with footy as well is those things that you need work on, you can't do it alone. Like if you've got a ball and it's kicking or whatever, you're not hitting a target, you might just be like kicking at a wall or something, and then you got to go get the ball. So it's like, or like ground balls, you only ever throwing them away from yourself. So it's, if you're doing it by yourself. So team is definitely something that it definitely progresses your development a lot quicker. Do
you get like competitive with each other in like a good way?
Oh, big time.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Well, because often as well, you're mates with the blokes, but you're fighting for the same spot.
Yeah.
So when you're in the team and you're playing against an opposition, obviously it's like you want everyone to do well. Yeah. But when you're training against each other, it's like, well, I need to train better than you or whatever. So it's, if it's anything physical, it's always hard. Yeah. Which is, it's funny because it's very competitive and there's so many, like, well, not so much recently, but I remember in my first few years as well, there were just constantly fights at training between players. Actually, sorry, there's still fights now, but it's more in like pre-season when it's like two teams going against each other. Now everyone's like, oh, I'm pretty bashed up for the weekend. Well, let's just get through to the next game. But yeah, I think you sort of skimmed over. I've written down your accolades. Oh, yeah. You skimmed over how big they are. We've actually written here, so. You said, won the Raw Comedy National Champ in 2016, won Best Newcomer in 2018 at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. The Pinder Prize, is that how you pronounce it?
I think that's the one that will help me with Edinburgh. Yeah. It's with John Pinder who helped like make the festival, I think, and then Assembly, one of the big venues over there.
So what is the Pinder sort of equivalent to? From our research, it seems pretty big.
I have no idea.
In terms of like kind of not like
I don't know anything about anything. So I don't even know what any other awards are. Like I didn't know what that was until like a year ago when I was like, I think I'd like to try and aim for that.
Well, that's pretty funny as well. We've written down you performed it. So you're going to Edinburgh to do the Fringe Festival. Is that right? Yeah. So that is, Wiz over here described it as the Mecca for comedians, and that's when I had to be like, what's the Mecca?
Yeah. Wait, you didn't know what Mecca was?
And then I was like, Mecca, cool, that sounds big. What's Mecca?
It's a cosmetic store.
Yeah. So you, how long is the show to for that, like in terms of actual performance?
So it's like my show's about 60 minutes on the dot.
And for 60 minutes, how much time roughly do you find that you put into a show that big? Because you're saying that this is what's helped you to be able to prep for that, but how much time goes into that?
Well, it's because this is still only my third show. I mean, I guess it's four, but not really, because I did a random show just whatever at Sydney one time, but it's sort of like still. I think this is the show that I've felt like now I know. Like, you know, when you feel like you start to see the bigger picture of like, oh, now I know how I'm putting this together now, more than the start. I was sort of more like compiling all the bits that I was like, oh, that's funny, I'll write that, and then putting it all together and trying to make a through line. Whereas now I was like, I started with the idea and worked back from that. And I feel like that show then took probably like almost like a year and a half, 2 years, because I was thinking about it so much before I started to like actually write it. And I sort of started with this idea, and the idea sort of changed because I went back to Townsville, because it was sort of about, I don't know, like not being able to go home to my family during COVID, and missing them, because I sort of like, I don't know, I always thought I was normal, and then when I started doing comedy, I realised I wasn't. You know, like you're like, I started comedy thinking I just did normal stand-up like everybody else.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like 2 years in I was like, I do alternative comedy. Like I just thought I was relatable.
What does that mean? Alternative. Why is it different?
I guess it's like you know, like a relatable comedian, everyday observations would be, you know, just a straight stand-up coming out being like, this is you know, just jokes that you've sort of heard before
like
in different ways.
Or, you know, like a Jerry Seinfeld's very much like, plain food is small.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that sort of like thing, relatable stuff that you go, yes, hipsters are like that. Yeah. You can, coffee, they've got beards and stuff.
Brunswick, yes.
Yeah. And then, I am like talking about, I don't know, just like whatever, dugongs or whatever, and I think I thought that I was saying stuff that everybody was relating to. I just thought it was the same thing. I didn't realise that it was like having that and having a slightly skewed point of view was what was interesting about me.
What was the one thing that where you were like, oh shit, no, I'm odd? Is it dugongs? What's one thing that you were like, oh, I'm coming from a different place here?
I think there was a bit, like, because it was like early on, there was a bit I had where I can't remember the bit really. I would talk about like I've got this container of things. It's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I put my multivitamins in, and then I like screamed at the audience because I'll be damned if I'm getting fibromyalgia, because I thought that was relatable. I was like, yeah, we all take our multivitamins so we don't get sick when we're old, don't we? And everybody was like, what? So, like, why is she so angry about this? I don't know. I just thought it was so relatable.
And that they're all. What do you call it? You've divided them up into the days. This is how many multivitamins I've had. The only vitamin that I reckon I've had at home that I used to have when I was a kid as well is just, you know, the vitamin C. They taste like oranges or whatever.
Oh, yum.
And just have one of them every now and then when you think about it.
I see. If I'm feeling sad or something, I just go to the chemist and browse the multivitamins. Because one time I had vitamin D deficiency in a Melbourne winter, and I was so sad, and then the doctor was like, you've got vitamin D deficiency because there's no sun and you're constantly wearing clothes that cover your entire body. And I started taking the vitamin C, and all of a sudden I was happy again. Yeah. The vitamin D, and then so now I just go like, maybe I need vitamin B. I don't know. I'll just buy that and take that. It's probably, I don't think you should do that. I think you should talk to a doctor. But.
If you're unhappy, vitamin D.
Yeah.
Don't go see a therapist.
No, that took me a few more years.
When do you feel like in your comedy and your progression in this sort of thing, when do you feel like you can go like, you know, take that sigh of relief and go, I've made it? When's that sort of end point for you? Well,
I don't think I think like of like fame or whatever is like a byproduct of comedy. So I don't really think of comedy as like something that I'll like have completed, because I sort of like, I don't even know if like, I don't know, I sort of just do what I feel like I want to do. And so like this show, I had a joke where I had like a sculpture or whatever in the show, because I just sort of do what interests me. And so I don't necessarily think I'll have like, I think all I want to do is have a career where if I want to do something or make something, I can get people to help facilitate that. And so if I have the type of career where I wake up and I'm like, if I have an idea for something and I work really hard on it and I think it's really good, I'll be able to make it into a thing. And I think that's what will feel like success. And then also because I just want to be able to, I don't think I'll ever be able to like retire because I like to just putter around and make things. And so I think as long as I can, if I just get to continue to work and people want to see what I'm doing, then that will feel good. Because I don't really care about that sort of like fame side. I think that's quite like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like fun to me. I think like just being able to be like, oh, okay, if I want to, make the thing I want to make, like a art exhibition of sculptures or make a film or just do a heap of shows or, you know, I like David Sedaris, like write a book of essays and get to tour it, reading it at big theatres and stuff. And like, I think he could walk down the street and have a normal existence. Like he said in the town he's from, because he got a Fitbit and then got obsessed with it, which I think everybody does when they get a Fitbit. But he got up to like 80,000 steps a day he was doing. It would take him like 8 or 9 hours. And he got known because he just needed something to do on the walk, so he would just pick up rubbish. And in the town he's from now, they've got a garbage truck named after him. Oh, wow. And none of them know he's like a famous like rider. They just know him as the garbage man. Yeah. Like I like that. I don't know.
And you said you didn't really grow up with comedy or know much about it. So going to Edinburgh, is that for you? Yeah. Do you like walk in with that mentality of like, I'm just here to do my show? Or do you realise that it's bigger than, like, because it's a pretty big step, right? That's where a lot of comics, I think if they start young, they go, oh, I want to be there. That's if I get there, I feel like I've done it, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think for me, because I, like now I'm in the sort of industry and like I get how it works and stuff. Like I want to go over there and, because I've been there before, because when you win Raw, you go over and do this other competition over there. And like, so I got to see it and see what it's like. And, you know, there's hundreds of, I think there's literally over 1,000 shows there during the festival. And it's not just comedy either. There's like theatre and
it's very
juggling.
Art, like
performing arts, right?
Performing arts.
Yeah, lots of different things. And so I sort of always set goals for myself, and then I'm not allowed to get upset if I suddenly I'm like, oh, I want that other, like it's like I'm only allowed to stick to my goals that I've pre-written beforehand. And if anything else, I just could be like, well, you didn't write your goal about that, so that's your fault. And so like going into it being like, okay, so I want to feel like I'm constantly working on my show and never phoning it in, and making sure I've got like the right people coming in and feeling like I've got like good word of mouth at the festival, because I always think that's the biggest thing at festivals is like if you can have comics like your show, then they'll tell other comics and then they tell all their family and stuff and other people, and it just spreads that way. And that's like the best way, word of mouth, I think, to grow a audience. So I think that's like what I want to get out of it, is just to be like, oh, I've had the right people come, and to try and start to get those sort of like connections in the UK, because Australia doesn't feel like there's not really very many alleys here for stand-up. It feels like in Australia the height of comedy is being able to be a guest on a panel show. And
you've done that as well, haven't you? You've gone to Spicks and Specs and things.
Oh, I just did another one, and I was so glad, because my first Spicks and Specs, I just had a surgery and I was on endone. And there's like this photo of me where they made everybody do the press photo where you're like looking into the camera and smiling, and everybody's doing that except for me, because I'm staring just directly up at the ceiling. And I was like, oh my God, Danielle.
The way with the fairies.
Yeah, completely. I didn't get a single question except for one that Miff like whispered to me, because I was like, okay, yes.
Ask me the question. Still staring off into nowhere.
Yeah.
It's this.
It's a nightmare. Yeah.
Spicks and Specs would be cool though. That must
Oh
have been
yeah,
fun.
it was so much fun, because it's like the thing where, I don't know, when I was a kid, Spicks and Specs, I would watch that on the TV, and so being able to do Spicks and Specs, it was like, oh my God, the people I watched when I was coming up. And there was also this show, it only had 2 episodes, and I was on the final episode before it got cancelled. But it was Rove's like Saturday night, Sunday, I don't know what it was, Saturday night Rove or whatever. And I was on like the 2nd episode of that, doing some stand-up, and I was like, oh, that's so cool, because Rove was so big when I was a kid, like to watch that. I was like, oh, cool, I've got to be on one of the two. Yeah, the show lots of people didn't like, but still, it was Rove.
Rove was big.
He was.
Rove was
big.
Massive.
That was like the only sort of American style version of like I have guests each week from famous things.
I think it's the only one that's ever like really worked. Maybe.
Yeah. Because all the others are like formed around things, right? Game shows, and quizzes now.
Yeah.
Mainly Australian comedians. And I wanted to ask you actually, as a comedian, do you have like rivalries or is it nurturing here?
Or any idols or someone that you base your shows off, things like that?
Oh yeah, it's sort of a bit of both, I guess. Like there's always like, I guess like the same thing as like with your teammates where you're like, I love this person and I think we push each other to be better, but at the same time, of course I want to destroy. I think that's like the good mentality to have, so that like the rising tide raises all ships sort of thing. And I do think it's real nurturing as well. Like when I started, like there's like these two guys, Pete and Luca, who sort of like, I don't know, they're like the guys who sort of run the Melbourne scene amongst the open micers, and they always like told me about what gigs to do and always put me on like in a good spot in the show. They'd always put me on in the first bracket. And what if everybody's like, oh, you should book that person for the gig so you can work your way up. And so that's like really nice and super important when you're like early on in a career, because audiences aren't like, we need to see this person we've never heard of, but comics can recommend people. And I think like idol wise, I always loved other people in the scene and stuff, but I've never really mimicked anybody because I didn't watch comedy growing up. So it was like I got into the scene and then I saw people and I was like, whoa, they're so good. But I already sort of like had my voice almost.
Your style.
Yeah. So that was, good for me, because then I didn't have to worry about finding my voice, which was something everybody always talks about.
Well, I suppose that answers the question of meeting your heroes and things like that. But you said you grew up watching Spicks and Specks. How was that to then be able to go like, oh my God, I've grew up watching these people and now I'm like, I'm one of the stars of the show. Like I'm one of the people on there. Yeah, it was so cool because you're on the bench and stuff and in the room. It was just so nice. I don't know how to. I don't know how it felt because the first time I was on Endone, so I don't really remember it at all. Like I had to watch the filming when it came out because I just completely forgot spaced it
about it. Yeah. Well, I watched a movie after the surgery and then 2 weeks later I was like, we should watch that movie. And Jonah was like, we watched that. And I was like, oh, I don't remember at all. But yeah, I did it again recently and that was like cool to be able to like now remember it and be like, oh, that was fun.
Yeah.
I had a fun time. But I do forget when you're on the recording, I forget that it's being recorded for TV because I'm just like having a fun time and getting into the game. And then I'm like, okay, you got to stop screaming at Adam Hills. You're like, that's wrong.
Do you have, and you alluded to it before, but do you have moments, so when you're in your set, I'm interested in this because I'm interested in like how people think about when they're in their moments, so when Max is on the field. But when you're on stage, are you completely within it or are you sort of out of yourself but doing it? So like when you say that you recognise people are like, oh, this isn't going well.
Yeah.
Like, do you have your set so well down pat that you can do it and be out of yourself and just be watching yourself almost from above? Or how does that work? I'm always curious. Like, how does it work to be on stage and do comedy, I guess? I
feel like that's almost like the worst thing when you do that, like sort of like autopilot. It's something that like when you do a set for so long you can slip into, and it's like the worst thing because you're never like then fully in the room and the audience, they can sort of tell, like they might laugh and go along with it and you might have a really good set, but it's never going to be as good as if you were like present in the moment, remembering and thinking about like what facial tics you're going to do or whatever. But then there's like a third thing because it's like autopilot. I mean, there's bombing, and then there's like
that one's pretty bad too.
that's the worst one. But no, actually, I'd prefer to bomb than do fine. Doing fine is like the worst because you feel like you're like, I didn't even learn anything from that. I just was fine. And then there's the autopilot. And then being in the moment, remembering, and then there's like that sort of like, that I don't know, I feel like everybody has that like creative, like sort of that like flow where you're like, feel like you're like walking on air. You're like, I can do no wrong in this moment. I'm almost like somebody else is controlling me. How was is this some sort of lightning bolt? How is like 2 seconds before I'm like, haha, yes, if I wink there, oh, that's going to kill so like that's the thing that is always like wanting to be able to like, how can I get to that at all times? Because mostly you're in this point, but.
Yeah, right. And what did Melbourne International, Comedy Festival, sorry.
Yeah.
What did that feel like doing it? How many sets did you do there?
I've done a bunch over the years. This year it was like, I think, 22 nights.
Yeah.
I always do the full run because I like the full run.
Yeah.
Some people like, since COVID, half runs have become more common, but I think it's like, you know, you're always, if you do 22, you're going to get way more experience because you're doing an hour. And most places you don't get to do an hour every night. If you're doing spots, it's like 5 to 7, max maybe 20, 30. So being able to do an hour every night for 22 nights, you just get so much better.
Yeah.
Which I think is always like, you know, people like want to sell tickets and stuff, but I always think about it as it's the goal to get better because it's like a 50-year long career, you know, and it's like you're still so early on in it. Yeah. It's just better to get better than to be like, oh, I don't want to do the time.
Yeah.
After that 50-year long career, do you ever see yourself back in Townsville?
I don't know. Well, because I feel like all my family will be dead in 50 years. So there won't be any point, you know.
It's actually it's so dire, but it's so true.
Yeah.
I think about that with going back to Albury. I don't think it'll be like I think my parents will probably still be around by the time that I move back there. But I love the idea of going back to Albury because I loved growing up there. But I also go like, if they're not there, then it's not the same. Yeah. So not so much with them passing away, but more if they just move towns. I'm like, am I still going to go back to Albury?
Well, like I think like I'd love to live in the country, but I don't know, Townsville is just it's so hot. And also, I mean, like I'd like to live closer to my parents when like they're older, but I don't know if I could do... I think I'd do it if I got to live out in the bush because they're both in the suburbs still now. If I could move out to the bush, then I'd like it. But also it's hard because there's not gigs and stuff, so I'd have to constantly be flying, and Townsville's like sort of an annoying place to fly from all the time. But I think when I get older, I'd like to... I don't know, I went to like the Hunter Valley a little while ago because we live in Sydney now, and I do like that because it's like sort of you can still be cool, but it's still country. And everything's chill. But almost all my sisters, it depends where they live because one of them's currently in Canberra and she really likes Canberra. I went there. I'm not moving to Canberra. It's freezing. Yeah. And then my other sister, she's still in Townsville. But she said she wants to like move to Perth maybe.
That's actually...
It's nice.
Didn't think I would, but I really liked Western Australia. I mean, sorry, I didn't not think I would. I just thought, it's a bloody long way from home, but it was very, very nice.
Yeah, it's sunny and... nice, yeah. There's sort of a city there as well, so there's still space to do stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
What's next for your act? So you go to Edinburgh and you play. What's the show you're performing?
The same show I did in Melbourne, but I'll do some changes and stuff to it so that they can understand it, I guess, because it was quite Australian. So I have to explain a few things. Yeah. And then hopefully that will lead to sort of like hopefully management over there to help boost... Like, I guess because it's sort of like trying to boost profile. Yeah. So I guess I would like to get management so they can help me get projects up off the ground that I want to work on. Because it's so hard because if you want to do stand-up, you have to have people know who you are so that they come to the shows so that you can do it. And so there is that element of being like, I guess I do have to do hopefully some panel shows or whatever. But over there it does seem like you can... build and become really good at stand-up and have your audience without needing to necessarily be on every TV show like you have to in Australia to have a career, which is so strange because people don't even, like they can see you on a panel show and then still not know what you do.
Yeah, sure.
Which is weird, yeah.
Do you find that, so you're looking forward to your next show in Edinburgh, do you ever find that you're going like, right, once I tick that one off, this is the next one? Because the thing that I'm really wanted to ask you about as well is, so like we talked about before, the majority of your content came from your family and country and things like that, but now you're living in the city, in Sydney. Do you find that anything is sort of like living in a city, anything sort of popping to you of going like, that's pretty good for a show?
Oh, yeah, I always find like everybody is so insane and everybody thinks they're so normal, and that's the thing I struggle with. It's like everybody's doing the most mundane thing, but so mundane that it's driving me crazy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I'm like, what is going on here? And that is the thing, like, I think my next show I've been thinking about, because I went to the psychologist and he told me, he was like, well, you definitely got ADHD big time. And then he was like, and you know, you got, the autism and stuff. And I was like, what? What? And he was like, yeah, I think, oh, okay. You didn't know? And I was like, I didn't know. And I think that's something I want to, like, think about, just because talking about, like, my family is, like, you know, I think people think autism, you know, it's like a spectrum or whatever, but I think people, like, think it's, like, this, like, massive thing, like, they look at love on the spectrum and they're like, that's it, and being like, oh, it's more than that, but also all the things that I love the most about my family that are the crazy things, that's probably the autism.
Right.
You know, that's probably that. And I think that's what I probably like the most about people in real life too, is like I always think, like, when somebody dies, like, the things you remember it's not the normal stuff. It's only the stuff that stood out as being quite strange.
Yeah, the quirks.
Yeah. And so being like, well, that's the stuff that I would like to talk about in the city, like leaning into, like watching that stuff, because I do like watching people do the most insane stuff in the city.
And people watching is one of the funnest things to do ever.
It's the best thing.
I've found that often as well. With, like, it's so funny that you said that. I've never thought about it like that. But when you ask a city person about the country, they're like, can't comprehend why on earth you live in the country and things like that, thinking that everyone's, I don't know, like a hillbilly or something like that. But then in the city, I'm like, you guys are nuts.
Oh, yeah.
Like, completely nuts. And you're just like, everything just goes straight over your head, just thinking, like, that's totally normal. And I find that I'm sort of slipping into that a little bit now, becoming like a person who's lived in the city for a long time, that I've started picking up those said behaviours.
Oh, yeah, it's like living in an alternative reality.
Yeah.
It's like we're going through the matrix. This is fun to do if you want to do it, is if you're talking with somebody and you're like, oh, this is like the worst small talk in the world, like really trying to make it even more boring. You just keep making it more boring and putting less and less facial expressions into the chat until you're just like, yeah, what's the discount code for that? Where do I get that from? And it's like you walk out and just be like, they didn't even bat an eyelid.
Yeah, they're like, wow, what a good, like, engaging conversation.
Yeah, it's so much fun. Oh, yeah, I mean, although I don't know, maybe I am hard to deal with because I talked about my partner a lot. Sorry, I always think about, we spend a lot of time together, and he'll always, like, in social interactions be like, what was that? Because, like, I'll do stuff and I think it's normal. Like, we were at brunch one day and the lady came over and she was like, what do you want? And I was like, just the poached eggs, but can you make them hard because I don't like them runny? And she was like, what? And I was like, just like hard? And she's like, what? And I was like, no, just like no runny egg, no runny yolk. And, like, she couldn't understand, and then I just went like 4 minutes. I was like, that's how long you need to poach the egg for to get it really hard. And then Jono was like, oh my God. And then I was like, oh, just scrambled then. Yeah. I don't know what.
My partner does something, it's not quite, I suppose it's the same, but she does it that it's all day going like, righto, Max, we're going to this place for dinner. I've been thinking about it all week. This is what I want for dinner. I want this for dinner, and that's all I want. And then we get there and we sit down and I'm like, all right, I'll look at the menu, I'll go through, I'll find what I want. As soon as I find what I want, there's no second guessing. It's like, whatever. There it is, that's my choice, I'm happy with it. But she'll see the menu, been talking about this thing for ages, and then go like, I don't know what I want, which one, panic, and then similar to that, it'll be like, just avo on toast, thanks, or like, you know, something like that. Then as soon as they go away with the menu, she's like, why did I order that? Every time.
You got to take the lead and be like, no.
Yeah, you wanted this, get this.
Yeah.
But then the problem is it'll always come back. It's like, no, but I feel like this now.
Does she get jealous when your food comes out then?
100%, except we don't ever order the same thing. She's a vegetarian.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So then I'm like, she's either jealous or repulsed. I can never tell.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Danielle, thank you so much for coming on the show.
No worries.
On the lunchtime. It was a pleasure to have you on. And yeah, I'm wishing you all the best in the future and what's to come.
Cheers, thanks for having me. And good luck with, get the field.
Yeah.
Footy and stuff, yeah.
And whatever this thing is.
Yeah.
Whatever this nonsense is.